Hello and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to make this cross-stitch kit that I got, and specifically I'm gonna make this cute little squirrel. This is just a simple kit that I got, and it comes with a plastic canvas material that is a bit softer, and all of these patterns that are actually marked very well with the yarn. The yarn comes on these very long strands that are just wrapped into these cardboard pieces, which actually do have all the markings pre-marked, which is really nice. So I don't have to go through the yarn and mark anything or set anything up. I just can grab some strands and start. The instruction mentioned you should use like 2 strands of yarn at once. And how I like to always start off my cross stitches is I like to mark a grid, but no matter what I tried, the pencil wouldn't stick. Also, I noticed on the back side we have a guide for the outlines, which is super nice. But yeah, I tried and tried, and I didn't really have any light enough markers that I could have used, because it will show up. If I would have used like a black marker, it would have just looked really bad. So I kind of had to freehand things and hope for the best. Spoiler alert, I messed up with the counting already. Should have started 1 over to the left, because I went with the like in between parts and not the gaps when I counted for how much space I need for the like lower part, but that's okay, it's not too bad. So I'm just starting this out, and the thread is full on cotton thread, and it's actually quite nice thread. Like, it doesn't seem to fray, it doesn't seem to rip too easily, and it was fairly nice to work with, and the length they gave was like the perfect length, like perfect maximum length a strand should be. And while working with cross-stitch stuff, I personally like to first do half the stitch to like mark out where everything goes, and then fill things in, except for in some areas where like the color is like so sparse that I like to immediately finish off that section of cross stitch completely. Now, working with canvas is a little bit different than working with the Aida fabrics that I usually do, because I actually have like a clamp for those, and I can just use both my hands to work the needle back and forth and pass it through. In this case, I had to work just with my right while holding this piece in my left hand to like prop it up, and it was a bit more tiring and definitely also took way longer. That being said, I'm definitely not a pro cross-stitch. I don't cross-stitch too often, so I'm not that fast with a frame either, but it definitely makes the process a little bit easier. But the bonus for using plastic canvas in this case is that you can make like wall or window hangers, which honestly, obviously with fabric you can do too, you just have to like really starch it and stuff. But yeah, this kit came with plastic, so I'm gonna use it, and we're gonna see where we end up. It's definitely a nice plastic that's like flexible, but not too flexible. Although I had some issues where I had to unravel some stitches, and me pulling on one side of the thread actually ripped the plastic, because it's like more of a rubbery-esque plastic, which means like if you pull on it, it like stretches out and out, so you cannot pull your stitches too much or you will break it. So I really hope that when I'm finished with this and I put a hanger on, it will not rip off, or else I will have to find a different means of securing. I do try to keep the back really neat, so every time I do a color change or like have to change the thread, I try to like weave in the ends with the first few stitches, and in places where I can't, I like to try and weave in the ends through previous stitches, which was a bit harder on this canvas material because again it flexes a little, so you had to be really careful. And I had it several times where I thought I went through the fabric, but in truth I kind of went through the canvas wrap layer a little bit, which was weird. But it was, you know, just a matter of getting accustomed with the materials, and by the end that actually, I think, turned out really well. With my cross stitches I like to go by large color sections, and like usually when I have the squares, those help me to separate that out. With this one I had to go with a lot of breaks and like going back and forth with the pattern, kind of figure things out. I decided to start with the tail just to make things easier for the placement, and then I wanted to work on the body. I like to have like the outlined colors first, so the colors that go on the outside to like really help me find the placement for them, at least when I cannot have a like grid system. If I have a grid system it doesn't really matter too much, I can go from like whatever I feel like, but in this case, you know, I wanted to start out with the like dark brown, go into the lighter browns. Some of the colors are like already finished with the double stitch from the cross stitch, some of them here are not, so you will see them getting darker. I just didn't feel like including like that minuscule color change into the video since this is already really long, but I kind of wanted to include like most of the stitching progress for you guys, just, you know, to hopefully have a little bit of a relaxing video. I did do some parts on stream, and this is actually like most of the parts that I did on stream were like these darker shadow parts, and these really helped me to like pin certain things in place. So starting out with the tail outline, then the body outline, and then I'm going through the face. I'm trying to keep the back again as neat as possible. Like for a window hanger it would be ideal if you have like a two-sided thing, but I'm not master in any way, shape or form of the two-sided cross stitch. People that can do two-sided embroidery or cross stitch are truly masters and I admire them. So I just wanted to keep it as neat as possible, which also means that like the paths between certain sections I wanted to keep as like short as possible. So in some sections, again, I'm finishing the full cross stitch, and others I just run along. Certain sections like the arms I actually separated out and used the new start with my thread. Some others I just try to, you know, just like minimalize the path where I have thread running on the back. And then I always try to put it in place where I can go over said thread with the next colors. I did have some stuff in the end, especially where it was going over with like the black thread where I have longer paths, but that was mostly fine anyways since it was the outline. I think overall I managed pretty well to keep things clean. I did mess up a little bit with the belly count here. I had a gap where there was not supposed to be a gap, but at this point I didn't notice and I just blissfully worked on the face. And then I started on filling in the body. At this point I was quite happy with how everything looked filling in the body, and I wanted to go into the belly and all those kind of sections just to finish up the squirrel first before I'm starting on any of the accessories and decor. And this was actually the point where I started realizing that something was off, and where I noticed, okay, I miscounted somewhere. And, you know, it was basically like in the lower belly there's one line, like horizontal line, too much. And like things with the belly didn't match quite up with the foot, and you can see the gap there. I was quite confused why that was there. But in the end I managed to fill it in with just some more brown. Also, you would have seen me use like a needle tool to lift up the threads a little bit. I'm also using that to like try and get rid of knots, because yes, I'm not perfect. I do get a lot of knots, whether it's embroidery or sewing. I try to like regularly, whenever I feel like the thread is like rotating too much, like spinning itself in too much, I usually like hold the piece up, let the thread kind of spin out again. This just happens when you go back and forth a lot, like you turn the needle, it like rotates the thread more into one direction, and you just end up with the thread like wanting to just spin around itself, and that, you know, causes these kinds of knots. But I think I actually managed pretty well. I had like 1 or 2 knots that I had to completely cut out and start anew, but most of them I actually managed to unravel. Now by this point, working on the green part, I actually came a bit closer to the date that I needed to have this done, so I kind of sat on this like most of the day and night when I had time. And I did have like 1 or 2 mistakes more where I had to unravel stitches, especially since some of the color markings were very similar. Like I only noticed way later that the stitches I put in for the leaf, like there was some spacing for the leaf here, and I added some dark green, but when it was supposed to be like a yellow or an orange, and I had to like basically double take when I worked on the leaf later and open up some of the stitches, which was totally fine in the end, but it was a bit frustrating. To be fair, like it was like the same symbol, it was a U, just one of them was upside down and one of them was right side up. And when I was looking at the threads, I kind of had them laying sideways, so my brain, I guess, at this point, working hours and hours on this, just didn't compute that I used the wrong color, and like it didn't come to me even though I had the picture of how it should look like right in front of me, which I always like to do just to make sure that I have the colors right. But it's fine, it's not too many stitches. Now, one other thing that got altered were the mushrooms a little bit. You know, the right large one needed a little bit of help because it was a tiny bit higher, and the very right tiny one was one where I'm gonna miss a row, like literally just 1 row, because else I would not be able to do like the outside black outline stitching. But I was totally fine again, like you will not notice it in the end. I was a little bothered by it that I miscounted, but it happens. As long as it's not obvious and you don't like ruin an entire section that will look off, it's just completely fine. And yes, you saw me unravel the leaf. The leaf was actually one of the parts where the canvas ripped in one place when I tried to unravel. I really was careful. I snipped the thread in the back where I needed it to snip, and then I went like thread for thread, segment for segment, lifting it up. But I guess it was still too much pressure because like it gets very tight in spaces where you have like all 4 points of thread already going through the canvas, and removing 1 point of thread was just apparently too much for it, so, you know, it ripped. But I went over it very carefully, and I am going to secure the stitches in the end with a little bit of glue on the back. So I was actually fine as long as I didn't pull the thread too much that I worked over it with. Luckily the pieces still laid flat, like I didn't rip any of the plastic out, so, you know, you cannot really tell at all, and you just know because I told you. So this is gonna be our little secret. Nobody else that's gonna look at it, it's gonna ever know. Seeing all the details come together was actually so much fun, like seeing the mushrooms, get the colors and get the spots. I did also miscount a little bit on the spots and added some other ones, but that was like mainly just because, again, at this point, like my brain didn't quite compute that also the mushroom would be a little bit higher than, you know, as the belly was. So, you know, I had to kind of manage around that, and in the end I figured it out. I just added some lighter and darker stitches in like some areas that the original picture didn't have. And it was time for the leaves, and this was really like bringing everything together. Obviously I'm missing the acorn. I kept that for the very last, just giving the little squirrel its acorn. You know, I always think it's like the best final touch, that like the last detail that brings everything together. And since the acorn was on the outside, I thought that was the perfect thing to end on. For the leaves, like, they were actually super simple, like just literally 2 colors or 3, I can't really remember anymore at this point, like everything blends in, but yeah, it was just simple shapes, but they still looked like leaves. And I also added like the little leaves on top without filming because they're basically the same. But yeah, for the acorn it was a couple more colors, and some of the stitches I noticed like they didn't quite look as they do look on the finished piece on the like picture. And I noticed that like a lot of heavy lifting for like certain spots is actually done by the black outline. So I was really looking forward to adding it. When it comes to black outline, I know a lot of people like to do like kind of a running back stitch. I do that kind of stitch for like 1 block kind of pieces. When it goes any longer than 1 stitch, I actually just do a long line of stitch and then go back from underneath through the same holes, like on each side of the thread. And I do that for each stitch to basically pin it down. And it will still look like you did a running back stitch, but it will look much neater, because if you do like a backwards running stitch, you go through the stitch with like multiple different threads in a way that they like push each other to the side, and it just doesn't look as straight, I find. Also, I love that the pattern incorporated both like stitches that went along the like boxy lines and really like incorporated the boxiness of like the canvas cross stitch, but there was also like a lot of stitches that went like a bit more, you know, like diagonally, and really like brought out some of the outline and shape a little more. Like there were some on the back, there were some around the face and around the eyes, and I think it really helped like still keep that nice little cross stitch look, while also you know, add some more outline details, refine everything. I also love that the outline added these like cute little wisps on top, like the hair tufts on top of the ears, because, you know, having those as cross stitch, as like a full cross stitch, would have been like way too heavy. And actually doing the outline was like one of my favorite parts. Yes, it took me like a good 2 hours, but it was so meditative, and like just seeing everything come together was like the best feeling. And my very favorite part in like all of cross stitches whenever I make animals are always the eyes, because they bring everything together and make everything feel more alive. And the outlines of these eyes were like especially great. They were so much fun, they added so much life, and at the same time I also, you know, added the little smile it has. And this squirrel is really looking so cute and so friendly, and it made me so happy to work on it. And, you know, I really hope that the person I'm going to gift it to is gonna like it as much as I liked working on it. When I finish the outline, like some of the pieces actually do not have an outline, which I think is very good because that brings the focus more to the main details. But when I finished it, it was time to cut it out. I think originally you're supposed to like work on all pieces on the canvas and then cut them out, but since this doesn't have to be on like a frame or a embroidery hoop, I could just cut it out of the canvas, since you can still like easily apply the other parts. The original hanger was quite bulky and I didn't really like it, so I kind of cut it off and just cut a slit in like some of the plastic, and that worked way better and it looked way better. And then I carefully went around the edges with just a lighter, like really carefully. The plastic is super soft, and I also made sure I'm in a well-ventilated area and wearing a mask. I just wanted to round it off because it was so soft that I had some problems keeping it straight with my knife. Like you can see on the tail, there's a little dip in it where I tried to like shave the plastic with my knife and it just got caught, and I really had some trouble. I tried filing, that didn't work. So in the end, the lighter, just carefully not to like light up any of the threads, worked the best, and it looks so cute. I did water down a little bit of vinyl glue. I used vinyl glue instead of fabric glue because it works practically the same in this case, since it doesn't need to get washed. Because there was also like some threads that I didn't want to poke out on the side, and of course some of the threads I needed to secure because of the broken canvas. And you know, you can hardly tell that it has glue under, since when it like dries it's clear and it was very thin down. But yeah, overall I'm so happy with how this turned out. You know, the little mistakes I made just give it more character, make it a little bit more unique, and it's so adorable. And the kit was also so nice to work with. The threads were nice and organized, the markings on the patterns were clear, and I loved the addition of like the extra outline on the pattern, because I found some pattern add the outlines with the like same size that they show you the pattern for the cross stitch, and it got really hard to keep on track with what goes where. And considering that I haven't done a plastic canvas stitch in a long time, this was just overall a really good experience. Anyways, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of these motifs. And let me know if you've ever done cross stitch and what your favorite type of material is to work with. Like, do you like polyester thread, cotton thread? My personal favorite is cotton or cotton and silk. And do you prefer plastic canvas or fabric? And as always, I hope you have a great day. See you next time. Bye bye!